Starting off this countdown, we have the dog bones. In 2012, archaeologist Karina Gutierrez was excavating a site between the zebra and hippo pens of a zoo in Peru when she came across something very gruesome and shocking. She unearthed more than 100 dogs resting alongside hundreds of humans. This site is said to be more than 900 years old. The human remains showed signs of torture and violence, suggesting that they died a gruesome death. The dogs, on the other hand, were ritually strangled. It's thought that they were buried alongside their owners as part of a ceremony. This is a very, very dark thing to come across. Coming in at number 9, we have the impaled heads. In 2009, a new railway bridge was being created in Sweden's Motala Strom River. That's when archaeologists started to unearth artifacts that were thousands of years old. Over the next few years, more and more artifacts were found in that area. You got animal bones, to tools made from animal bones, to remnants of human skulls, and lastly, mounted skulls. This is said to be the most grisly thing that archaeologists in that area have found. So the skulls were 8,000 years old and were impaled on wooden stakes. All skulls were missing their jawbones and had shown signs of trauma. The male skulls had blunt force trauma to the top of the head, while the female skulls had trauma to the sides and back of their head. But that's not the way that they died. Studies had shown that the wounds had healed, so they did not die immediately after sustaining those injuries. Then at some point, the victims' heads were chopped off and placed on stakes and then submerged underwater in the middle of the lake. They were placed on a stone platform surrounded by animal bones. Again, this is a very traumatizing thing to come across. In our 8th spot, we have the witch prison. In 2016, historians were restoring St. Mary's Chapel at the Kirk of St. Nicholas when they found a weird ring mounted into the wall. Dr. Arthur Winfield, who was leading this project to restore and preserve the chapel, was pretty skeptical about this ring. At first, he thought it was nothing. But then he decided to do some digging. He checked out the city's archives, and that's when he discovered the chapel's dark past. Back in 1597, the church played a crucial role in the Great Witch Hunt. The witches were taken to the chapel and chained up to this ring. This was their last stop before being executed and burned to death. So all of a sudden, this ring became much, much darker. After excavating the area, the bodies of 22 young individuals were unearthed. No remains of the accused witches were found at this site, so it's believed that they were buried elsewhere. This iron ring embedded into the north wall of the chapel is now all that remains of this gruesome past. In our 7th spot, we have LASCAUX caves. Legend goes that back in the day, 4 teens were exploring this cave system in France with their dog when they found a narrow entrance to a cavern. Being brave, they entered, and that's when they found an archaeologist's dream. The cavern was filled with prehistoric cave paintings. These paintings are 15 to 17,000 years old and depict a series of images including tons of animals. In total, there are 600 wall paintings covering the interior walls and ceilings of this cave. In 1948, this site was open to the public. People were welcome to come into the cave and see the beautiful paintings. But in 1963, it had to be closed. The artificial light was fading the vivid colors of these paintings. It also caused algae to start growing over them. So in order to preserve the history, no one is allowed to visit there. In fact, only a small number of scientists are allowed in, but they only have a few days a month to be in there. Other than that, they are kept locked away. Moving on to number 6, we have the East Kirk of St. Nicholas. So over the years, more work has been done on the Kirk of St. Nicholas. In 2006 and 2007, it was the site of a major archaeological excavation. Basically, they were excavating the site before the restoration work could be done. Well, upon doing so, they came across the remains of more than 2,000 people. 1,000 were the remains of entire skeletons, so they weren't missing any parts. It's believed that most of the bodies were buried before the 1560s, because after that, the Protestant Reformation in Scotland banned the burials of people inside churches. They also found the graves of 9 young individuals whose body had been laid out together, forming an arc shape. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Eldorado. The lost city of Eldorado is a famous myth that dates back to the 16th century. Eldorado is the name of a secret city of gold said to be located deep within South America. It's said to be filled with riches beyond your wildest dreams. When the Spanish conquistadors heard of this tale, they tried with all their power to find the city of gold. Alas, they were unsuccessful. But legend goes that archaeologists have discovered this city, and if they have, of course they don't want this known to the public, at least not yet. Could you imagine what would happen if word got out that there is a city filled with priceless artifacts and gold? People would go nuts and totally ransack the place and ruin its beauty. So that's why it's believed that this place is being kept a secret. That is until they have removed all the treasures and have done all the research that they need to. Coming in at number 4, we have the ancient city of Aleppo. This is known as Syria's second city, and is said to be among the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. It's filled with ancient structures and has one of the oldest and biggest castles around the world. But here's the thing, this site is now an endangered World Heritage Site. The overpopulation and commercialization is taking a toll on this beautiful ancient city. The new developments and overcrowding have threatened the ancient cityscape, which is like every archaeologist's worst nightmare. Moving on to number 3, we have their labs. After a big dig, archaeologists bring their findings back to the lab. What happens there is pretty private. Every single artifact that they find is washed, dried, identified, labeled, and then cataloged. All of this is done with precision and care. Imagine how much crap they would get in if they dropped or broke an artifact. Obviously, for many reasons, archaeologists like to keep their lab a secret, and I don't blame them. Imagine your personal workspace being available for everyone in the world to see. Coming in at number 2, we have DEADMANS Island. The DEADMANS Island in the UK is now a forbidden island. No one is allowed to travel there unless you receive special permission, but no one wants to go there anyways. Not only is it rumored to be haunted, but it's filled with dead bodies. Basically, the island was the dumping ground for men and boys who died while on board prison ships. They didn't want to bring them back to the mainland, so they buried them on this island to prevent infectious diseases from spreading. But over the years, coastal erosion and the tides unearthed these bodies. In 2016, the remains of more than 200 men were found on the island. They were then reburied. But the changing tides continued to unearth the bodies and wash them out to sea. So they kind of just gave up and left the island and all of its bodies alone. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the lost city of Atlantis. I'm sure you all grew up hearing tales about the magical lost city of Atlantis that lays submerged somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, it turns out this city might be real. First, let's look at the history of this city. Atlantis was first described by Plato over 2,000 years ago. He said that the island had over 10,000 chariots and hundreds of bulls and elephants. Then over the years, the city fell and eventually got submerged into the Atlantic Ocean. For centuries, historians debated whether this city was real or not. Then, in 1882, a man named Ignatius Donnelly published a book titled Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. In this book, he claimed that Atlantis was a real place. He even claimed that all the known ancient civilizations originated from Atlantis' Neolithic culture. If this is real, then surely archaeologists and historians are madly searching for the city. In fact, they might have found it already, and similar to Eldorado, they are keeping it a secret. Starting off this countdown, we have Cleopatra's tomb. I'm sure you all have learned about Cleopatra and her relationship with both Julius Caesar and, of course, Mark Antony. She was an Egyptian icon known for her intelligence and beauty. But here's the thing. Her tomb still remains lost. It's still undiscovered somewhere near Alexandria, Egypt. In 31 BC, Cleopatra and her lover took their own lives after Octavian defeated them. They rather die than be under his domination. The two were then buried together near a temple of the Egyptian goddess Isis. But the exact location of this tomb is still a huge mystery. And obviously, archaeologists are desperate to find it, but they are fearing the worst. They believe there's a high chance that the grave is already empty due to grave robbers. Moving on to number 9, we have King Tut's tomb. So let's stay in Egypt for a little bit longer as we dive into this next point. In 1922, King Tut's tomb was unearthed by Egyptologist Howard Carter and his crew. And that's when stories about the tomb being cursed took off. It said that whoever disturbs the rest of the king will be cursed. Several weeks after opening his tomb, Carter's team started to die mysteriously. And people were like, oh my god, this curse is real. Believe whatever. But it was discovered that his tomb was covered in 2 dangerous types of mold. These molds can cause reactions ranging from congestion digestion to bleeding in the lungs. Hence why archaeologists need to be extremely careful when exploring the area. Not only that, but they believe that there's more to this tomb than they have discovered. There's evidence that King Tut was buried in a hurry. They believe maybe this tomb was originally built for someone else, and that there may be other undiscovered mummies buried in this same tomb. In our 8th spot, we have the Copper Scroll treasure. In 1952, archaeologists discovered a number of Dead Sea Scrolls in a cave in the west bank of Qumran National Park. One of the scrolls piqued everyone's interest, and that's because it wasn't like any of the other ones. This scroll was copper with writing engraved onto it. What's even more fascinating is that the scroll apparently talks about hidden treasure. Obviously, archaeologists don't want you knowing this, with fear that someone will be able to decode it and find the treasure before them. They believe that there is a high chance that the treasure is real. Now, the scroll dates back to over 1900 years ago, during a time when the Roman Empire controlled the Qumran settlement. Researchers believe that the locals hid the treasure to keep it out of the hands of the Roman forces, and then they created this scroll so that the treasure would be unearthed in the future. In our 7th spot, we have Abu Mina. Located in Egypt, Abu Mina is a town filled with ruins of a church, monasteries, houses, workshops, etc. It was built in remembrance of Saint Minas of Alexandria, who died in 296 AD. The town was actually buried on top of this tomb. As a result, it's thought to be a very holy area. However, this site is now greatly endangered and is now a UNESCO World Heritage Archaeological Site. This site is endangered due to the rise in water level. It is facing constant deterioration. By 2001, it was getting so destroyed that conservation measures were put in place to protect it. In our 6th spot, we have Samarra City. Between 1911 to 1914, an ancient civilization was found in Samarra, Iraq. This civilization thrived between 5500 BC and 3900 BC. Archaeologists found a huge ancient mosque and a spiral minaret. However, over the years, it has been destroyed. Between 2006 to 2007, there was a bombardment at the mosque, and 2 of the minarets and a clock tower got destroyed. As a result, this site was shut down. It is now on the list of World Heritage Sites endangered by UNESCO. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Deadly Tomb. Now imagine coming across a huge archaeological site on your own property. Well, that's what happened in 1974 to a group of Chinese farmers. They were digging on their land when they hit something hard. They continued digging and unearthed a life-sized terracotta soldier. After that, archaeologists spent 4 decades excavating the site. In total, they found 8,000 of these life-size soldiers. All these soldiers were created to guard the tomb of Emperor Jin Shi Huang. Back then, it was believed that these statues could protect the emperor in the afterlife. Typically, real-life individuals were sacrificed and buried alongside people of power. That was until this emperor, when they thought, we can't kill thousands of people, so let's just make statues instead. It's a very fascinating site, but sadly it's off limits to everyone, even archaeologists. And that's because there's a high concentration of mercury in the tomb. Also, they believe that the emperor is protected by deadly booby traps. So instead of risking their lives trying to investigate, they just leave this site alone. Moving on to number 4, we have the Paris Catacombs. The Paris Catacombs are a series of tunnels located underneath Paris, France. In the 18th century, the catacombs were created when the Paris cemeteries were full and they needed a place to bury the dead. As a result, they buried the dead underground in a series of tunnels. It's believed that there is around 6 million bodies buried in these catacombs. Now, here's the thing. There are portions of the tunnels open to the public for tours and such. However, over the years, a number of people have strayed off the path and have actually gotten lost. Like, there are 150 miles of tunnels in a maze-like fashion, so it's very easy to get lost. And a number of people have actually died after wandering off. So maybe stick to the path or don't go on the tour. There's enough dead bodies down there, they don't need any more. In our 3rd spot today, we have SABRATHA, Libya. This is another beautiful site that is at risk. The archaeological site of SABRATHA was excavated in 1921 and consists of an amphitheater with a 3-story backdrop wall. Then you got temples and a church with beautiful, colorful mosaic flooring. However, these Roman monuments were made of soft sand sandstone, so weather and soil erosion are quickly destroying these structures. It's also on the list of World Heritage Sites in danger. In our second spot, we have the City of Gold. This is a mythological place said to be filled with great fortune. Although this is said to be just a legend, rumor has it that it could be indeed real. In fact, some say it's located near the Colombian city of Bogota. Others believe that it is in Bombay, India. In fact, for over 300 years, people have gone to Bombay in search of this gold. However, many have died as a result. If this city of gold is real, archaeologists certainly don't want the public knowing, and it would cause more deaths and fighting and war. And in our number one spot today, we have Murder Island. In 2017, a mass grave was unearthed on an island off the western coast of Australia. This island has since been given the name Murder Island. The grave contains the remains of 5 individuals who survived a shipwreck. In 1629, their ship called the Batava sank nearby. They managed to make their way to this island where they died of dehydration, or so it's thought. Shortly after, more than 100 other survivors were brutally murdered by mutineers and were also buried on this island. This is said to be Australia's darkest mass killing.